morning, Sam. I'd like to introduce you and your business to families who are expecting babies. I know a lot of people need your services and don't actually know it exists. So would you like to tell us who you are, what your business is, and what you can do for new parents, people expecting babies?
Sure. Thanks, Justine. So I'm Sam, and I am a birth and postpartum doula. So I have my business, New Season Doula Care, and I essentially, offer doula services to expecting parents throughout pregnancy, and also postnatally after the birth of a baby. So I guess in short, a doula is, the meaning of a doula is somebody who provides non-clinical physical, emotional, and informational support throughout pregnancy, childbirth, and in the early postnatal period. So what that means, so on the birth side of things, as a birth doula, I will work with couples or expecting parents, expecting mums during pregnancy in helping them prepare for childbirth. That can look like, preparing a birth plan, understanding what their birth wishes are, helping to alleviate any anxieties and fears that they might have around giving birth. So it's really working with them to help them understand what's important to them and how I can best support them. And then that also means that I'll be there with them as their doula throughout labour and be that continual support. Also really making sure that that transition into parenthood is as smooth as possible. So there's so much that goes on in that transition. After you give birth, there's a big hormonal drop that we know that happens that can make emotions all over the place for the mother. If she's wanting to breastfeed, there can sometimes be challenges there. So it's about helping her find ways to breastfeed and overcome any early challenges that can arise. Also, just nurturing, I suppose. So cooking, making sure that they're eating well, that they're sleeping as good as they can, and really that they're being looked after in such a way that's going to allow them to then flourish as new parents, and that the transition will be a lot smoother than it would be without that support.
Okay, oh, that's brilliant. So that's brought up a few questions for me, and I'm wondering, for when you're looking at your services for labour, is there a certain gestation? Is there a time frame that people should be engaging your services? And how often would you maybe meet people before labour? What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So that's a really good question, because I do really believe that building up a relationship with your doula during pregnancy is, and building up, just having a really trusting relationship, having a few meetings before the birth is going to build up that trust, build up that rapport, and you're going to feel much more comfortable with your doula when the time comes for you to be in labour. So as for what gestation, I would say, look, second trimester is a good time to start meeting your doula. I've had clients that I've met in their first trimester, others that leave it till a bit later into their third, but anytime really. I think second trimester is a good time to start really meeting your doula and building up that relationship, and then you will be much more comfortable when you're in birth. And as we know, when you're in labour and giving birth, the more comfortable and at ease a woman feels with her environment and the people around her, the better she's going to labour. So that is really important.
Absolutely. I'm wondering if, so do you have a certain kind of, the most common kind of client? Would it be somebody who's having maybe a home birth or hospital birth? And do you have any clients who are having birth in a private hospital?
Yeah, so all of the above. There's a big combination of home births and hospital births, both private and public hospitals. So there's really no limitations. So doulas sort of not specifically for home births. We do go to all sort of birth settings. So I actually personally find I do have the majority of my clients are in a hospital setting. I suppose the majority of births in Australia are in a hospital, so that would make sense. And I do find that couples that engage with me for their hospital birth are usually aware that it can be challenging to give birth in a hospital setting, and so that's why it can be a good idea to have a doula there with you.
I'm a midwife, obviously. I've had lots of people in labour in the hospital, and they do bring their support people in, including doulas. And
Yeah.
I've seen how incredibly different the experience can be from having that support of the person they already know. How do you find it as a doula going into different hospitals? Do you get some kind of resistance from some people, or do they tend to welcome you?
I find most of the time, more often than not, I am sort of welcomed quite warmly, especially by the midwives. I find a lot of midwives are really happy to have a doula there. It can take some of the load off them as well, because we know midwives are essentially there with the woman as well and her partner, but they've got all the clinical side of things that they need to take care of. So that can work really well, having a doula there. There will be the odd occasion where there might be some resistance to having a doula there, but it's not it's not anything to the extent where it's uncomfortable for anyone. It might just be that maybe some doctors or even midwives might have there might be a bit of a stigma attached to a doula where they think they might be interfering, but I find that that's usually not the case. And doctors, midwives and doulas work really well together.
Find has been really helpful as a midwife is the doula can give support that isn't really sticking to the hospital policy. You can really talk to what the woman wants in labour and what it is that her wishes are, and you know those intimately, so you're more likely to be able to give that completely impartial advice. And I find that's useful. And the other place I know that doulas really do have a massive value is all midwives have shift work. We have the end of our shift comes and a new midwife will come in place. So that's something you're going to bridge that gap. How do you go with providing support for the whole of labour when we know that we can't tell how long that is?
I personally just always prepare for a long labour. I just sort of go in when I get the call that a client is in labour. I'm just prepared to be there for the long haul, and I think that's just part of being a doula. And you do expect that because, like you said, there can be really quick labours, there can be very long labours. So I think going in with no expectation of how long it may or may not be is really handy, and it just as a doula it keeps me going. I do often see in hospitals we'll have a midwife on, and the mum will develop a great sort of rapport with the midwife, then she'll go off shift and a new one will start, and then the morning will come and the previous midwife will be back on shift again. So we definitely can go through some long labours, but I just see that as part of what we do. It's providing that constant, that continual care, which is, like I said, really important.
Talk me through what it is exactly you do in the hospital. What are the practicalities? How do you spend your time?
Yeah, so depending on how far along labour is when we get to the hospital, I might first of all spend my time just setting up the environment a bit to make that as warm and, I guess, cozy as possible. So it might be setting up some little fake candles or fairy lights, putting a blanket over the mum that's her own blanket from home, if she's brought any photos with her, essential oils. So really just setting up the environment to be a really nice atmosphere. That's going to be very important. It's not great for it to look all sort of clinical with big machines and white walls. So we try and make it feel warm, and then it's really working with the mum throughout labour, and just it'll look different for every labour, for every mum. So it might be whatever she needs in established labour. So it might be providing massage. A doula will often work with something, I don't know if you've heard of a rebozo sometimes.
Those are those really long pieces of fabric that can help
Yeah,
sort of sift the pelvis. Do
sift
you
the
provide
pelvis.
those, or is that something that's in your kit?
It is, yes. So I've got my doula bag, so I've always got a couple of rebozos in there, ready to bring out if we need. I have TENS machines as well that I have and lend out to my clients. Some people find the TENS machines really helpful for sort of a natural pain relief. So we'll set them up, and yeah, I might bring out a few things from the doula kit that are all just really about comfort measures and sort of natural pain relief techniques. And it's just, again, there's a lot of physical support being provided. If the mum needs somebody to lean in or physically hold her, I'll do that. And it's also working with the partner if there is a partner. And I suppose working as a team to support the woman in labour. So there's a lot that can go on in that hospital room, yeah. And just making sure too that we're keeping to the mum's wishes and that things are, that labour is sort of going as to how she had planned. Not that you can always control that, but it's keeping the birth plan in mind and trying to make sure that nothing's sort of getting in the way of her wishes. So yeah,
Value is in the relationship you have in advance, and knowing her and how she is in advance. You might be able to see when there's those little wobbles and when maybe it's a great time to make a suggestion to maybe let's go to the bathroom, or let's try and have a little walk around, and kind of the actual knowing of the mum can make
that's exactly right.
Yeah. And I think as well, you touched on the partner or the other support person who may be there, to know that it's a full-on job for people who potentially have never seen a labour and been part of that before. So for them to have tiny micro breaks, knowing that their partner is fully supported, I think is massively important, rather than you doing everything. Like you said, it is very much teamwork.
Yeah.
And to provide each of you with kind of different aspects of care and support that might be equally valuable. Would you say that you emphasize much time on caring for the other support person or the other parent?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I think it's a really important thing to acknowledge as part of the doula role as well is, yes, we are primarily there as support for the birthing woman, but we are also there just as much for her partner if there is a partner there. I find partners usually really want to be involved and really want to do what they can to make it a nice birth experience as well. But they often just need a little bit of guidance, or they're not sure what to do or what not to do. Or when the woman is in labour, they might freeze up a bit and really just feel a bit unsure and question themselves if they should be doing something or not. So I find having a doula is really important for the partner in just boosting their confidence and being providing reassurance for them, especially when things, like you said, if they've never seen labour before, and they might sometimes be there questioning if something is normal or if that's right, and to have someone there that can actually say this is a normal part of labour, or this is going to be fine, and that will make a big difference. And again, that means that the labouring woman is not worried about what's going on with her partner. Again, all very important for the progress of labour. So yeah,
and that's a really good point, that lots of people in labour are concerned for their support person, that they must be getting tired and that they must haven't have eaten. And so yeah, that's a great point. Something that you mentioned, bringing a TENS machine in, and I was wondering if something you do is to see people from home. I know we're advising lots of people to have as much early labour at home as possible. So do you go through and transfer with the family to the hospital, or do you kind of try and be specific about where you're offering support?
Both. I find it's really individual. So this is stuff that I'll talk about with the pregnant woman and the couple beforehand in our prenatal sessions, to really get an idea of how they're feeling about when do they want my support to come in. We definitely talk about labouring at home as much as possible. And some people will want their doula there while they're at home, just to make sure that they're not rushing to the hospital too soon, and that they can effectively labour at home as long as possible. And then, we all transfer to the hospital together as labour's really established. But then there will be people as well that are happy to just do their thing at home, and then they want to meet their doula at the hospital. So it's really individual. There's no right or wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, as a doula, I do both.
Brilliant. I was wondering, that made me think as well then. So is there something that people assume you might do but you don't do, or that doulas don't tend to be involved with?
Yeah, well, like I said, we definitely don't provide any medical clinical support whatsoever. So we won't be hands-on, we won't catch the baby, we won't take any blood tests or anything like that. That's always for the medical team. And a doula won't do any of that at all. So it's really so when I talk about physical support, it's massage, it's touch, it's providing whatever physical comfort measures she needs without having anything medical involved. Yeah.
Is a certain kind of person who would need your support more than others, or is it a service that anyone could benefit from?
I really think it's a service that anyone can benefit from. I think more, but I hear of lots of people who don't know much about doulas, and then after they've had a baby, they really wish they had a doula when they find out what a doula is. So it's definitely something that's for everyone. Obviously, if there is someone who doesn't have as much support, maybe they don't have a partner, or maybe they are really fearful about giving birth, like they're people that will obviously benefit really greatly from having a doula. But that's not to say that a doula is not for everyone, because a doula can really be for anyone. Yeah.
My sister had a little team of us. It was before I was a midwife, and she had her husband and her best friend and me, her sister. And it was because each of us would have brought something different and individual.
Yeah.
And she didn't know whether her husband would be that knowledgeable and know the different nuances of labor to step up. So there was her best friend who'd had babies, and could be that real big older role model that who kind of, I've been through this, you can too. And then there was me, who was just there to do literally anything. I was just very keen to be present. It was just before my midwifery training. So just to be loving family support as well. So it worked really well to have people could go off and have a cup of tea, a meal break, bit of a walk, come back, and taking turns with that back pressure. Those massages was immensely helpful. I was amazed how exhausting that is after 2 minutes of strong pressure. So presumably that's something that you do.
It is, and I love it. And it's so I love it when there is a full birth team involved. I think it creates a really nice atmosphere, and it can create a really beautiful labor. And for the birthing woman, knowing that there's always someone there, and that each person brings something unique to the space that's going to really help her as well. So yeah, I love that.
So that's great. That's all labour, and I'm aware that an amazing service that you also provide is the postnatal support.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk a little bit about that and what you do?
So I find there's the birth support, and the postnatal support looks completely different. It's a very different type of doula service. So postnatal, what I'll do as a postnatal doula is I will go into a person's, a new mum's house after she's had the baby, and I'll have postnatal visits with her that are usually for about 3 to 4 hours in length. What each postnatal session looks like is going to be very different from person to person. It could look like breastfeeding support for someone who's really wanting to breastfeed. That might be putting measures in place to get set up for breastfeeding well from the beginning. I should note too that it is really important if a client will book for a postnatal doula while they're still pregnant, that's a good opportunity to get to know your doula before you've had the baby. And then that can just be really helpful setting up. So if you are wanting to breastfeed, you can start preparing for that while you're already pregnant, rather than feel completely stuck and face a bunch of challenges that you never knew existed after the babies arrived. So sorry, I'll go into a house. Cooking is a big part of what I do. I cook meals. A big thing for me is making sure that new mums are well nourished, well fed. I think it's such an important part of the whole healing process, healing from childbirth, and building up their physical and emotional strength again to go into motherhood. So cooking, and a lot of the time postnatal work involves really just holding space for the new mum, to really, if she needs to have a cry, if she needs to have a vent, and just be a safe person that's not a family member or not a friend, and somewhere where she feels safe from any sort of judgment, and just being that safe place for her. Sometimes it'll involve head massage, or belly binding is something that I offer.
That's nice.
So belly binding, just in really short, is just a nice way to, with cloth and a certain style of wrapping up the belly, and it's just a way to provide some physical support for the abdominal and core muscles while everything's healing from childbirth. So yeah, there's lots of different things that we do in postnatal sessions, but it will look different for everyone, just depending on where they're at and what challenges they might be facing.
One thing that you seem to play down a bit is I've seen some of the meals on your website that you make, and they look incredible. I think that can't be underestimated. I'm rubbish at cooking and I really don't like it. So to have had some delicious, nutritious meals for that postnatal period would have been incredible. And as you say, it's really important for that postnatal recovery and for you to be able to rest.
Yeah, rest and food, rest and nutrition are my biggest, the things that I emphasize the most to new parents.
Tend to sometimes book you later, have had no service from you before, and realize that actually now I'm struggling, now the sleep deprivation has really kicked in and I could do with that extra support. Is that something you provide?
That's actually really common. I would say that on average, probably about half of my postnatal clients bookings are after they've had the baby. And just as you said, the partner's gone back to work, the sleep deprivation has really kicked in, and it can suddenly, the overwhelm can get unbearable. And I do, and I find that people quickly book me and be like, please, if you've got any availability, this is much harder than I expected.
Sessions tend to be more, do people expect you to babysit, or is it more about you helping support them through maybe what they should be looking for and what's some nice gentle advice for them to be doing?
It's different for everyone. I'm not there to babysit, but in saying that, I will definitely take the baby for a few hours if that's what the mum needs. If she has not slept for days, for weeks, and she just needs some rest, that's definitely what I'll be doing. And just for the mum to know that the baby's safe, she doesn't have to worry. I will take care. If the baby's crying, I will settle the baby. If the baby really needs a feed, and the mum's been napping for a couple of hours, then I might gently go and wake her and let her know that her baby's ready for a feed soon. But I find that the type of support that each new mum needs, it will be different from person to person. So some mums do just need to have an hour or two to nap while I'm there. Others might need, you have some mums with really upset babies that might be a bit colicky or spend a lot of the time crying, and it often means that the mum just can't get much else done, which can be very stressful. So yes, in those cases, I'll take the baby so that mum can have a shower or express some breast milk or whatever it is that she needs to do. So again, it looks different from person to person. There are times where I don't do much baby holding, and I might do postnatal work for a mum who's already got children or an older child, and she needs that support more for the older sibling. Sometimes I've had clients where I'll get the older sibling to come and help me in the kitchen, bake some cookies for mum, or just play with them so that mum can have that time without a toddler climbing all over her. Or other times it's actually holding the baby so that mum can have that time with her older child, because that's a big thing that, you know, we don't always talk about, is that the guilt that new mums feel when they've had all this time with their first child and then a second one comes along, and trying to fit that all in. So yeah, there's a lot to postpartum support.
A valuable service, and we've got here in Australia, there's so many families that have migrated and maybe don't have that wider support network. And it's kind of really does come into its own then. Wonderful. Is there anything else that's really stand out obvious for you that you haven't talked about for the services you provide or the people you help, before we kind of move on into some other question areas?
I think it's great to have some sort of relationship with your doula while you're still pregnant, whether you're hiring a doula for birth or postnatally. It does always help to have that built up trust. I find that helps things go a lot smoother as well. Even postnatally, I often find that it might take up until the third visit for a mum to really feel comfortable to open up to me or to go and take a nap, if we haven't had that prior engagement. So yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you. It's really useful, I think, for a lot of people to understand what a doula does, and we're going to talk a little bit more about you specifically in a bit, and who you can help and which areas. But I've got some general questions that I'm going to be asking everyone, and I wondered, what is a really common question that people ask you?
Every time I get asked, why did I become a doula? I think that's usually one of the first questions people ask me.
It's a great time for you to tell us why you did become a doula. What is your story? How did you get here?
Yeah, I can for as long as I remember. I'm not going to say I was never, I never grew up wanting to work with babies or birth. That was the furthest thing from my mind. But I do have a memory that goes back for as long as I can remember. Is I've always been fascinated with how bad and scary birth is. And you hear women talking as a young girl, like all you ever hear is women talking about how terrible childbirth is and how it's something to be feared almost. And I remember I've always been fascinated by that and thinking, how have we survived as a species? If, we haven't always had our Western medicine, we haven't always had our big hospitals and all the latest sort of pain relief and everything. I was like, if childbirth is that bad, like how have we done it till now? And I carried that thought and that curiosity with me, I guess, into pregnancy myself when I was pregnant with my first child. And it really got me. That's when I really started researching and doing everything I could to understand why is childbirth so scary. I didn't feel scared of childbirth myself, but it felt like I should be, and I just needed to understand why. Also, that played into that, and I need to mention it because it all does play, but I remember my mother at the time, bless her, all throughout my pregnancy, she just kept saying, Sam, make sure you get the epidural. Sam, you can't do it without the epidural. Just go to the hospital, get the epidural early, and then that way you don't have to suffer. And it really just, I love my late mother and had a great relationship with her, but I hated doing what she told me to do. I hated it. And the fact that she always wanted me to get the epidural just made me more determined than ever to not get the epidural. So I could just say to her, I didn't have to get it. And I think with that determination, I really wanted to learn how I can avoid the epidural. So that all played into, I've got to say, I did have a really lovely birth experience. And having that birth experience, brought a new awareness to me that childbirth doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be this awful thing. And people shouldn't view it that way. So that sort of played into how the birth side of me being a birth doula. But then postnatally, so I had this lovely birth experience, but everything came completely crashing down for me postnatally. It was an absolute train wreck that I did not see coming. I was just stuck in this, this hating, the sleep deprivation, the anxiety, the constant doubt and blaming myself for things, all the, so many breastfeeding challenges. And it's just a time, it was not enjoyable at all. I wasn't eating well, I wasn't sleeping well. And yes, while I have some beautiful family that really cared about me and wanted to support me, it wasn't the type of support that I needed or that was helpful. And it just made me really determined, once I could start getting out of that fog a bit, it really made me determined to make sure that other mothers didn't have to go through that. Fast forward to my second pregnancy, I'd learnt a lot and I put a lot of measures in place for my second postpartum experience. And I can say that it doesn't have to be that terrible. Just with a bit of forward planning and setting up the right support for yourself, I did get to have a beautiful postpartum experience second time around. So it just, it goes to show that birth doesn't have to be terrible. Postpartum doesn't have to be terrible, but they both really do need support. Like, women need to be supported.
Especially for your first baby, there's so much emphasis on the labour and the birth and getting through that even when asked, women often don't request information and education about the postpartum period, because this birth is such a big event to anticipate and prepare for. And so absolutely, it can be kind of just like, oh, nobody told me this was coming. I didn't expect any of this. So and your story sort of like bears that out as well. But I'm really impressed by your inner wisdom that birth didn't have to be this awful thing in advance of you having a baby. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think it was more just a curiosity, and I really wanted to understand why it was so bad. So that, and that just spurred on. The more I learned, and I just loved learning it, and I just got addicted to learning more information. And so that definitely prompted a desire to go on and train to be in this field with birthing women.
There's qualifications for doulas.
I've done a course through, I don't know if you've heard of her, Julia Jones, offers a wonderful course for postpartum care, anyone that works with women postnatally. So I've done that. Because of my interest as well in breastfeeding, I did her additional breastfeeding course just to help. That doesn't qualify me to be a lactation consultant or anything, but it certainly helps to sort of just understand what the common breastfeeding challenges can be, and just some really basic troubleshooting and things that can help before things get bad or get to the point that they need to seek some other professional for that. So I've done those two courses for my postpartum work. And then there's the Australian Doula College, who I did my further training with to become a birth doula, and they also train for postnatal work. So that was a 12-month course, and in that we have to do attend 3 births as doulas in training, which, you know, is very valuable. And yeah, so they're the 4 things I've done. And then I always going to various workshops and just other training days just to keep on top of my knowledge.
Every birth you learn something new from, so that you're bringing that wealth of experience that is just cannot be underestimated. Is there something that you would say that you specifically, outside of every other doula there, that you makes you stand out, or something that you feel that you've got a particular skill or kind of speciality in?
Yeah. Also, I know a lot of the questions you've asked me, I've separated into birth and postnatal because I do find them very different. But when I'm doing work as a birth doula, I think I'm really about supporting a woman through her wishes, regardless of how she wants to birth. So if she wants to be induced, if she wants to have a planned cesarean, these are all things that a doula can support through. And I guess my ultimate aim is making sure that at the end of the birth, that the woman can look back and say that they felt supported, that they felt informed all the way through, and that they felt in control of all the decisions they made along the way during pregnancy and birth. I think that's really important. It's not focusing on how they should give birth or it's really not about how someone gives birth. It's about how they feel and making sure that they are informed and they're in control. So that's sort of the angle I guess I come from as a birth doula. Postnatally, we touched on this already briefly, but I'm all about the food. I love cooking, and I think that's one of my one of the things that I offer that is a nice feature, a bit of a standout. I make meals. So while I'm doing the postnatal visits, I will cook while I'm there, and I make big nourishing meals and snacks as well. So I might do a big soup or a big stew, as well as a batch of cookies or a chocolate brownie. And I like to make it enough so that it's not just for the mum or the family to eat while I'm there, but so that there's plenty left over between my visits, and that will last them for a couple of days at least. So that's something I think that I offer that's really important, because I just think me personally would love that, to have someone here cooking, and to know that there's something in the fridge that I can go and grab and not have to think about what I need to cook while I've got a new baby. So yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And so, talking about that, do you have any specific packages, or is everything so individualized it's hard to make a package?
I've got 4 main packages actually, that are just based around what I find is the most common. It just works well. So I've got my typical birth package that will involve 3 to 4 prenatal sessions, being on call from 37 weeks, continual support throughout the labour, and a postnatal visit. And that includes access to all of my equipment and some little sort of gifts and inclusions. So that's my sort of that is my birth package. And that's $1,800, that one, for everything included in that. But I also have a birth and postnatal. Occasionally, I will get a client that wants a birth doula and a postnatal doula. And so I try to, I've got a package that combines all of that. So everything from the birth package together with an additional 6 postnatal visits with meals included. So that's the best of everything. That's the best of both worlds.
Gold standard, yeah.
Yeah, so that's like my gold package. And then I have two postpartum packages. So I've got my standard postpartum package that includes all the meals I just spoke about. And that is 2,200, and that includes, I do need to mention, that includes I bring all the food, I do all the shopping.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm really big on just making sure that there's nothing for the mum to worry about. I take care of it all, and she doesn't have to think about anything. And then I also understand that not everyone loves food as much as I do, and some people don't want that as part of their postnatal support. So I also have a package that's a bit more cost effective, that doesn't include the meals. It's not to say I can't cook while I'm there, but I won't be cooking off my own menus or bringing any food with me to those sessions. So yeah, so they're the 4 sort of main packages. In saying that, though, I mean, everyone's different, and some people will be specific about, I want your services, but I can only afford this amount. And in that situation, I'll work with them, with the mum and her partner, and find something that we're all happy with, that's going to provide them with really good care, and fit into their expectations and hopes as well. So
fabulous.
yeah.
So is your
Yeah.
kind of your range, your geographical location range?
So I'm based in Altona, here in Altona, and my geographical range is really around the western region of Melbourne. I do sort of have like a 30-kilometre radius that I try and work within. It's not to say that I don't do outside of that, but if I do outside of that, I might charge a small travel surcharge, and then just make sure that I have the availability as well to be traveling a bit further out. But yeah, look, it's usually from the inner suburbs, the inner west, right up to sort of Melton Way, Melton, Bacchus Marsh, and even out sort of to Werribee. So it's that, yeah, the western suburbs across Melbourne.
Fantastic. So how are people able to get hold of you if they wanted to contact you and find out more?
So on my website, I have a contact page, and it's really simple, just inquiry with a submit button. I'll get back to people. That comes through to my email straight away, and from that I can schedule a phone call if someone wants to chat, or just respond to their email inquiry.
So something I've been wanting to ask all of the experts who come onto this forum is, what's one pearl of wisdom that you wish every new mother and potential father as well, it's 2 separate ones, knew? What's one piece of wisdom that you think you'd love them to know and understand or be aware of?
It's really important, I think, to really have that understanding that when there's a birth of a baby, it's also the birth of a new mother, and it's okay. As a new mother, you're learning everything from scratch. You're learning your own individual, unique baby. And there are going to be times along the way too where you make mistakes, you miss feeding cues, or you're not sure if your baby needs to sleep or just be settled. And I think it's just really important for new mums to understand that this is all okay. Making mistakes is part of the learning process. You kind of have to make mistakes to know what's going to work and what doesn't, or what's right for you and your baby. A lot of new mums can fall into the trap of blaming themselves and thinking that they're terrible mothers when things go wrong, when really it should just be viewed as a big learning experience, that is okay to make mistakes, and that's really what comes with being a newborn mother. So
sometimes you think you know everything, and then you come and have another baby and they've got different needs and different requirements, and it's not all about you, it's about what each individual baby needs. What is something that you wish every new father knew?
Something I think is really important to acknowledge for new fathers is, when we talk about postnatal depression, we tend to think of it as just a mum thing. And I think, as a society, we're not really aware, we don't really acknowledge enough that it can happen it's very common to happen to dads as well, for dads to fall into a bit of a postnatal depression or fog, if you like, where they just feel flat and not themselves. And so I think it's really important for fathers to have an awareness of this, even before the birth of the baby, so that they can start to recognize if their own feelings are starting to shift in the weeks after the baby's arrived, and to be able to seek help for that, and seek that support. So I think that's really important for new fathers to know, that while they're probably looking out for changes in the mum, to also know and be aware of any changes that might be occurring within them as well.
So true. And I think as well, when you're in the thick of it, when you're in that very newborn period, it seems as if you're in, for some people, definitely not everyone, but there's this tunnel and you don't know when you're getting out of it. Can you remember personally for you when it was that you saw the light, that kind of the sense that things were changing, that you could be starting to be a bit more yourself? Do you have an awareness of when that was?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say there was any specific moment where I'm like, oh, this is starting to get better now. I found it was a very gradual thing. Something I will say is, because I think there can be a bit of a misconception that the first 6 weeks is the hardest, or the first 3 months are the hardest. Like, yes, they are very, they're the periods of time that, there's the most learning going on and adjusting to life with the new baby. I had that belief myself. And so when we got to 6 weeks and nothing changed, I felt very disappointed. So I was hanging out for the 3-month point, like, surely things will get better now. And things didn't flip like a light switch, like I believed they would. So it was very gradual, and it was, between 6 to 12 months, I was really coming out of that tunnel, but it was a gradual months, yeah. And I think it's important not to sugarcoat that and say, oh, in a few weeks you'll start to feel better. Some people might, and that's important to know. It's going to be different for everyone, and for some people it will be a matter of weeks, and for others it will be a matter of months. But you do get out of it, and you do look back on it as a memory, and just that time with a newborn baby. So
that's so valuable, I think, for people to know that there isn't one way for this period to go. I know for me, when my first baby slept, she used to be awake all night, every night. And when she was 9 weeks old, she slept for 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the night. And she was 9 weeks old. So for us, the next day was just like we'd come out of some fog. And then it just so happened each night after that, she started sleeping longer and longer in the night. But it was literally black and white. There was no gradual. She flipped from never being asleep at night to being asleep at night. And it was amazing. And then our second baby came along, and that was so much more gradual. She didn't sleep through until she was 3, actually. She would be awake at least once and in the night, every night, until she was really old. And so it was kind of to know that you adapt really quick, and you get used to that, I think, to that vast range of experience. And I'm the same person. I parented the same, I believe. So it's not necessarily about what you're doing. It's about each individual baby.
Yeah.
What is one practical top tip from your experience, especially as a doula? You'll know lots of babies, but maybe just from your experience, of one practical piece of advice for either new parents or to do with babies or newborn care.
I would say, what I see a lot in the really early days and weeks with a newborn is parents can often feel quite nervous about bathing their babies. And it really doesn't help if the baby doesn't like to be bathed, and it can just add a whole lot of tension. You've got a screaming baby, you've got a nervous parent. So I think something to really make bath times better for everyone can be, I would say, make sure that the environment is warm before you undress baby for their bath. Babies don't always like it if you strip them off and then they're suddenly exposed to the cold air. So keep the environment nice and warm. It does help to have them nice and wrapped and to really just gently put them in the bath. I would also say to keep a warm washer over their torso, just if that's sort of out of the water, keep the warm water on, because that'll help baby stay warm and comforted throughout the bath. And then as much as possible, it's easier said than done, but the more relaxed the parents will be, the more relaxed the baby will be. So for new parents, if they can get into the practice of just staying calm and relaxed as much as possible throughout bath times will get better. And following those tips will hopefully help baby start to enjoy their baths enough.
Absolutely. And what in the time? So I think sometimes the issue with bath time is people just say, oh, it's got to be done because it's not happened today. Is there a good time, do you think, that is preferable? Is it after a sleep, or before a sleep, or after a feed? Is it that you recommend?
This is where I come back to say this is where it's all about learning your specific baby and working out what's going to fit in best, not just for the baby, but for you as a family. If you've got other kids and dinners times at a certain time, that's not going to be a time to do the baby's bath time. But if there's no other kids, 6:30 p.m. might be a perfect bath time. So it's about finding what's going to work well with your family, and the baby will settle in to the bath time routine. Whatever you choose to make it. You might think something's not working after a few weeks, so try something different. And it's all part of the learning experience.
Trial and error. Absolutely fantastic. That's good advice. It's one essential item that you that made your life with a new baby easier. So something that's very rated that you think everyone should have.
Yes, and I'm big on this, is a carrier, some sort of a baby carrier. So like either a sling or a more structured carrier. It doesn't really matter what type, but something that's going to keep your hands free and keep baby on your chest. Babies love to be held. It's not always practical to just hold a baby all day long when there are other things to get done. Baby carrier is my number one essential. It just allows you to hold baby and have your hands free, so you can do other things at the same time.
So what is something that you might have, especially after you've had your babies, and there's always new developments and products, what's something that you either at the time wanted and couldn't afford, or didn't know about, or just didn't exist, and now you've heard about it and you've seen it's great? Is there something that fits into that category?
I'd probably have to say they might have existed back with my first baby, but I just was not aware of them if they did. Is little bassinets for the baby to sleep in that actually attach to the side of your bed. With my first one, the poor thing, the bassinet, it was a bit awkward, and to sort of wheel around, and to get baby out, you have to physically still get up and get into it to pull baby out. But you can get these lovely ones where the baby, it's like sleeping right next to you, but still in their own little bassinet. So I think they're great, really great things for parents to have that comfort of knowing that the baby's right there, but also safe in their own bassinet. What
is one item that you had, maybe believed it was the best thing ever because it was sold to you as the best thing ever, but you never used?
Yeah, okay. This is my experience, and this won't be for everyone. But dummies or pacifiers, whatever you want to call them, both of my boys hated them, absolutely refused them. And I thought, I kept going out buying different brands, thinking maybe they just didn't like that brand or that shape or that style. They just didn't want a dummy, and it was a complete waste of time. I think with my second baby, after he refused it a couple of times, I learned to I wasn't even going to stress myself out with trying. So yeah, in hindsight, I didn't need dummies at all for either of them. They were a bit pointless for me. Some babies take well to them and they do fine, but I would say that too. If you do have a baby that doesn't like the dummy, don't stress yourself out in trying to force it to happen. Just accept that some babies don't love dummies.
Of the environment, there's an awful lot of waste, and we really need to be considering what we're buying ethically or wasting. So is there something that you think that parents should be thinking of or be more aware of, something that there's always a lot of waste involved in?
Yeah, definitely. I think something that was true for me, and I think for everybody's breast pads. Their breast pads is what you insert into your bra to stop. You do leak milk. Most women will leak milk between feeds, and so breast pads are an essential item. And I think most people tend to just buy disposable ones. They don't know that reusable ones exist. And the disposable ones, I mean, not only are they not very environmentally friendly because you're tossing them out every hour or two, but they're not as comfortable. And I think do yourself a favor and spend I would say you'd probably actually even save money on buying the reusable ones because you're not constantly going through them and buying them again. But get a few reusable ones. You help save the environment, and they are more comfortable. They're just softer. They're a softer insert into the bra.
Fantastic. So thank you so much. It's been really useful getting to know what a doula does and a little bit about you personally as well. And I've learned some things. So thank you. It's been fantastic.
Good. I'm glad I could help break that down a bit. And and hopefully it's been clear enough to understand. It can be there's a lot to it. There's a lot to what a doula does. So
yes, and some misconceptions. So it's been very useful. And hopefully some new parents will consider doula services that they didn't even know existed before now. And that's the purpose of these small interviews. So thank you so much, Sam. It's been fantastic to get to know you a bit more.
Thanks, Justine.